And he also had to decide the match in tie breaks, where he eventually won on 14 points now. Here we go.
And wow, it's 1b3 from
Wow.
Magnus Carlsen. This brings back shades of Adiban last season when this was really trendy. They started calling them the 1b3 Cowboys. And yeah, this is a very kind of sensible opening. It's got a reputation for being wild and reckless, but it's got positional ideas behind it. Magnus is going to put his bishop on b2 on a very nice diagonal.
Yep. So it's a strange kind of opening, but is it a move, this 1b3, that is considered a bad move, like some of the other openings we've seen Magnus do?
You can't say that, Kaya. Is it bad? No. It's a good opening.
Okay.
I mean, it has such a big fan club amongst the B3 Cowboys that we cannot say that. I mean, it is a reasonable opening. The big problem with it is that it doesn't actually challenge for the center. So it does allow black a free game. But in return, you know, white gets good development with the pieces and has a straightforward plan. So, yeah, definitely not bad.
And the one thing I will say as well, 90% of the time, like 80-90% of the time, it does transpose into the Reti opening or the English opening, into much more kind of sensible positional kind of variations. And I might get in trouble for saying that, but,
I was gonna say.
I'm not afraid. B3, there's a reason we don't see it at the top level every time. Black has dozens of ways to get very nice position.
But it must be nice to have this fianchettoed bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just eyeing up the whole board.
Exactly. And there's various ways black can deal with this. Black can copy, for example. I think this is something Pragg might do. Black might push the g-pawn forward and then plant his dark square bishop also on the same diagonal, just to neutralise the pressure of white's piece there. Magnus now thinking for a long time. Very surprising. I'm expecting him either to push white's e-pawn forward or bring white's knight out. But yeah, Pragg doesn't look concerned at all. Remember as well, this was popularised by Adiban last year, an Indian player. Adiban played on the same Olympiad team as Praggnanandhaa. For sure, they've discussed this before. This will not cause any surprises. Often B3 is only played at the top level nowadays for psychological value, for kind of surprise shock value there. And he's not going to surprise Pragg.
And, well, Magnus has played this a handful of times. I remember him doing something, I think he played it against Anish Giri, and I'm pretty sure he played it against Wesley So. And I also remember a long time ago that Wesley also did DVD on 1b3. I mean, I heard the story. Now, this is just rumours, that he didn't want to reveal any of his preparations. So he goes, no, I'm not going to do a mainstream opening on my DVD. I'm just going to cover this move, 1b3.
That was quite a few years ago. So Wesley released some videos on 1b3, but he'd never, ever played b3 in his life up to that point. So it's interesting, trying to show expertise in an opening you've never played before.
And it was on DVD as well.
It was, it was so long ago that DVDs were still in fashion.
Do you guys have a big library of chess DVDs or chess VHS
I
videos?
got rid of them. I did actually have VHS videos, and I did actually have DVDs as well. And I grew up watching the VHS. Gosh, I'm so old.
VHS videos as well.
Yeah. But, you know, they
How
used
can
to
you
be...
bin them, Jovanka? They're such classics. I still have those videos of the 1993 World Championship, the 1994 Intel Championships. I still get out that VHS player once a year just to...
I don't have a VHS player anymore, you know, that's the thing, because it's like old technology. I don't even have a DVD player. So, yeah, long time ago. I can still remember.
Yeah, unfortunately, Pragg wasn't alive in those days. I'm not sure he even knows what VHS is. But he
Probably not, actually.
He probably doesn't know. But he does know what this opening is, and he's played instantly up to this point, Pragg. And just very sensible, just pushing a pawn. And you see Magnus thinking, I think maybe the most principled move here for Magnus would be to push white's c-pawn forward 2 squares. At some point, you have to chip away at black's centre. Black's pawn centre is too strong. You can't let that kind of continue much longer. Otherwise, you're just going to be worse with white. You're going to be a bit cramped. So I think you need to start fighting for space. But the problem is that would transpose into the Reti opening, and Magnus maybe wants to play a more flexible approach. So he's spending a lot of time at this early stage. Spent 3 minutes on the clock. It's only move 5. He hasn't even played his 5th move yet. But what is he thinking about? Maybe he'll bring white's light squared bishop out. He can give a check with that piece. He can just move the bishop 1 square, getting ready to castle. I must admit, I'm flabbergasted. I'm almost speechless by his opening choice. You're ahead in the match. Why would you play 1b3? 1b3 is a must-win type of opening.
Yeah. Well, anyway, his pause does allow me to remind everyone that we do have a puzzle of the day competition, and this one is a good one. And we're asking you to solve the most beautiful mate in 2. We'll bring up, there it is, there's the puzzle. So if you're watching, do a screen grab, save it, and get your friends round, take pictures of yourself, tweet us the solution using the hashtag ChessChamps, and it's white to play. And it was created by, I have to remind you, the Charles Alexander Gilbert. We were like laughing about how old we were, but this one is very old puzzle, 1877.
Even before VHS.
Yeah, even before the Royal Mail. Probably by horse post, maybe not actually. So there comes Magnus does challenge in the centre. And yeah, tweet us a solution using hashtag ChessChamps. And I can let everyone know that those people who have tweeted in their answers, no one's got it right yet.
Really?
No one, yeah.
Probably going to take hours, right?
It will take hours. And the great thing about this puzzle is that often you see people struggling. And then as time draws on, towards the end of the show, they've got it. And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen many answers where players they found a mate in 2, but they're forgetting that white is actually in check in some of those variations as well, so there's no time to deliver checkmate. So you don't just focus on the opponent's king, or you also have to be careful of your own king. And meanwhile, a couple of moves in this game, black moved his bishop once, and after an exchange of pawns, had to move his bishop again. So Pragg has actually lost a small bit of time there. He's lost a tempo. I'm slightly surprised. I do like white's position now. White's dark squared bishop on that diagonal. Watch out for that being the most valuable piece later, the best piece on the board. First, however, both sides do need to rush to castle. I think Magnus will move his light squared bishop, and that will signal the end of the opening, but it has cost Magnus a lot of time on the clock. We saw the clock play a big factor in that last game between the two when they were both down around 30 seconds. Magnus prevailed there. I do feel that he needs to keep some time, because when Pragg has beaten Magnus, it's often with Magnus making a slip under time pressure.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. Strange choice of opening. I mean, looking at this position, it almost feels like Magnus is trying to play an opening that you'd see on the black side, but just with that extra move.
Yeah, and he does need to just move Magnus. He's spending a minute and a half when he's got 3 or 4 very sensible moves, but they're not going to change the outcome of this game. They're not going to be decisive. This is the type of thing, when I play chess as well, I note down my time after every move. Sometimes I look at my score sheet, I'm like, wait, I spent 6 minutes on this move, but it's so obvious. Why did I waste that time? And I think Magnus will look back. If this game goes wrong, he'll look back at these moments. He'll be thinking, why have I spent 6 minutes almost? And it's only move 7. OK, he does challenge black's centre. Also very, very sensible. If we do see a trade of pawns in the next couple of moves, then we'll either see a symmetrical pawn structure and equality, or we might see black, if Praggnanandhaa is feeling ambitious, take on what we call an isolated queen's pawn. Instead, he castles. And now Magnus, I don't think he can afford another long think. I think he just needs to bring his knight out, bring his bishop out, develop, go back to basics, just keep following those rules. And there we go. He's upping the pace now, developing the white knight. Very sensible.
Yeah, and I'm fully expecting Praggnanandhaa to also react quite quickly and develop his knight. And just checking the database, it has been played quite a few times, around about the 30-game mark. And the top player playing this system with the white pieces is Hikaru Nakamura, who is fast becoming one of Magnus's big rivals.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been one of his big rivals for years, Ivanka.
Yeah, but the results never kind of...
Not in classical chess, but in Rapid and Blitz, they've always been very balanced.
Yeah, I do remember that Hikaru built up this big rivalry he called Magnus many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
Sauron. And
I remember that. I'm playing with sunglasses.
Yeah, I mean, they were also... But then the classical results, as David said, didn't really match up. You know, the score was really one-sided. Yeah. But now it seems like Hikaru's got this new lease of life. You know, he's now the Fischer Random World Champion.
He is.
And really snapping at Magnus's heels, played in the candidates. And all the while being a full-time streamer as well is very impressive.
Yeah. Hikaru Nakamura is an impressive player. He is also living in California, in the US, where these players are now sitting, fighting it out on day 6 in the tour finals. Tanya is also in San Francisco. So we met already someone from the Chess Hip-Hop Federations. That's fantastic, Tanya. Who else is there with you in San Francisco?
Guy, joining us today here at Shack 15 is Elliot, also from the Mechanics Institute, but he's a big chess enthusiast, has been around in the scene for such a long time. Elliot, it was amazing to see you enjoy chess. How are you liking the vibe here with the tour?
It's, well, for me, it's pretty novel. I mean, this is up there. I mean, you rarely, I mean, I grew up with like high school gymnasiums and not so high rent hotels, and of course I've been a lot of other places now, but this is very nice. I mean, I'm looking across at Buena Vista Island. Is that Buena Vista? Yeah, Buena Vista Island, and just an incredible building. Yeah. Just what a great view.
It's a great place to have an event in, and especially a final of the tour. You got such a big matchup with Pragg and Magnus, and this is quite a generational clash. Are you enjoying that one?
From what I've seen, I didn't see the very end, but I saw Bishop F6. I'm thinking, it's not any good. And eventually he took it. Magnus did. I was expecting Carlsen to win, but I guess he kind of slipped away. I saw the face he made when he was talking to you. It was pretty funny. But yeah, we'll see what happens in these next games. I noticed that Magnus just played 1b3. I almost played that last night myself, but I managed to forget to. But definitely a typical Magnus. Did you expect that, sir? So no, it'll be interesting. I mean, I have barely seen the other games. I saw Duda versus Wesley So, which So won. That was nice.
1b3 definitely is somebody back in India. Adiban must be happy with that. I want to ask you, Elliot, that there are so many youngsters here in the Bay Area as well. You have been part of the chess scene for a long time. What's your experience been like?
With the kids, it's incredible. I mean, as I grew up, it was all mostly locals, and then of course there was the Soviet wave, or ex-commie, as Christensen liked to call them. All these players showed up that were incredibly strong. And it kind of changed the scene a bit, and of course everybody adjusted, and it became, you know, now they're Americans. But now we've got so many hordes of, if I might say, of Indian and Chinese and others, and some Vietnamese in the Bay Area. Of course, since we're so close to the Pacific, there are. I mean, you go to tournaments, and there's so many kids. Sooner or later, one of them is going to, or more, is going to become, you know, some super GM. Of course, I could mention someone who's recently become a GM, since you said I could talk about. I've played Hans, the elephant in the room, as they've been calling him, 5 times. We have an even score, but that was back in 2014. Things are a little different now. If we played, I'd have to, having properly checked the room, wonder if I have a chance, but I would. I always have a chance.
All right, well, it's nice to hear your thoughts, Elliot, on all the action that's going on in the tour final. But as you can see, Kaya, it's all eyes on the Magnus Pragg, the big matchup. Will Magnus win and wrap up his championship just today, or will it be Pragg?
Oh, it's so exciting, Tanya, to follow this. And very cool to hear from local player Elliot as well. We have moves on the board. Magnus starting with this strange 1b3 opening, and what's happening in the game.
Yeah, so the centre has completely clarified itself. We've seen a bunch of pawn exchanges in that middle of the board, and now Magnus finally has castled. Pragg, maybe so impressed by 1b3, has just pushed his pawn to b6, and he's going to do the same with his bishop now. That black light square bishop is often the problem piece in these types of situations, so he can improve that. And then we'll see both sides with good pieces, lots of central control. It's just going to be about who can outmaneuver the other. It looks completely balanced to me. How about you, Ivanka?
It looks completely balanced as well. I mean, take a look at Black's pieces, every single one of them. Good squares, no problem with development. Rooks are soon going to have connection. And, yeah, before I get too excited about Black's position, I can also see the same for White. White also has fantastic pieces. Just take a look at those bishops. They are on adjacent diagonals, primed for attack. So both sides have got lots of things to be happy about. I like White's position. I like Black's position. Anything can happen. I think it's balanced.
Yep. For example, White's queen will most likely step forward at some point. Black's bishop will mobilize. And yes, we were loving White's bishops, but Black's bishops are pretty good too, along these two diagonals. And it's all about the central squares. At some point, I think, predicts exactly what you were saying there, Jovanka. White's rook's coming to the center, Black's rook's coming to the center, and we'll just see a standoff. I just don't see how either side can really improve their position without allowing exchanges. For example, if White ever wants to improve his knight, he might have to step it forward, and then we'll see knights disappear from the board, and the position might fizzle out. It might be a waiting game. If we do see a situation like this with every piece perfectly placed, it's not clear how either side will improve. It's just waiting, maybe pushing some pawns, giving your king some space, retreating, just waiting, biding your time, and who will crack? Magnus has a lot less time on the clock, but Pragg is in the must-win situation, so it's unclear who's going to be taking the risks to try and imbalance this one.
We're only in move 13, and before this analysis, we did hear from Tanya and Elliot in San Francisco. Elliot being a part of the Mechanics Institute Chess Club, which is the oldest chess club in the US, a fantastic chess club. And before the tour final started, there was a meetup event at the Mechanics Institute, and we really want to show you some images from this fantastic chess club. Take a look at this.
I'm at the Mechanics Institute, the oldest chess club in the United States. It started in 1854. A special day for the Mechanics Institute today, as the players from the Champions Chess Tour are here for a meet and greet to come and have some fun with their fans.
We are now going to have our special guests sign our historic chess registry.
Kevin, how was the experience?
It was definitely very fun, and yeah, I hope to be back next time.
And Sebastian, did you enjoy meeting Anish and Wesley and Pragg?
Yeah, it's a great experience meeting them and getting to know them and just talking with them.
What about you? Who's your favorite player?
Magnus?
This is such an historical chess club. Actually, in the 1900s, all the world champions in chess, except for two, visited the Mechanics Institute Chess Club. And here, before the tour finals, 3 of the players in San Francisco joined in to visit this fantastic chess club. That looked like a very cool event. And right now, one of them, Pragg, is playing here against Magnus. Another one, Anish Giri, struggling over the last few days. And now a draw in game 2 against Mamedyarov. He lost the first one. Anish, if he loses the next game, he's going to lose that match as well. What's happening with Anish?
Yeah, he doesn't look his usual energetic self. He's still, in interviews as well, he's appearing too pensive. He's questioning everything about his game. And sometimes you need to leave the reflection for after a tournament. You can't get too down about things during an event. It feels like a bit of tilt as well. It's been a tough year for him on the tour, not quite achieving his usual high levels. So, he'll be back. He'll be stronger. Anish Giri, he mentioned as well, he's learnt a lot from his experiences this year. But, this event has been a bit of a write-off for him the last few days. Yeah.
It's drama in the other matches as well. Arjun Erigaisi could be about to go up 2 points to Liam Le. He also won the first one, Arjun Erigaisi. Looking good for the young Indian, playing at night at home in India. He struggled the first few days, but now on fire, Arjun Erigaisi. And Wesley So and Jan-Christoph Duda also playing game 2. First one was a win for Wesley So in San Francisco. He could be about to go 2 points up. The bar now going a little bit more towards center. We will follow the drama in that one as well. In this one, Pragg needs to make a comeback. The bar is very much in the middle. Can anything still happen in this game?
Yeah, anything can still happen. We've only seen an exchange of 2 sets of pawns. Every other piece is on the board still. And look at the knights in the middle, Jovanka. There's so much tension with those knights. You very rarely see a formation of 3 knights in a row. And I'm not sure who that favours. I think we will see the rooks start to gravitate towards the D and C files. From there, what next? That's the big question.
Yeah, exactly. What next? And both players will be considering, what to do. I personally am stuck. After the rook's move, I'm like, OK, probably I would be just moving pawns. Yeah. And just say, hey, Black, how about we pass the move to you? And, I mean, it's such a tense position. Neither side really wants to give a little bit because you don't want to be retreating your pieces because they're so well placed. And I just think this position is just very balanced. What I'm predicting is that there will be so much tension in the centre that the pieces will get traded off and we will see a draw.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to crack and trade off the first set of pieces first?
Magnus.
You think Magnus?
Yeah.
You think he'll be happier with the draw. So, OK, Pragg starts. He's the first one to put a rook on an open file. The white queen is a bit of a target, so Magnus might feel a bit uncomfortable there. There's no direct threat, however. Or is there?
There is, isn't there? Bishop takes knight.
Yeah, if the white rook moves across, maybe Black can consider taking and pushing a pawn forward. This looks very nasty with a pin. OK, maybe there is a threat, so maybe Magnus has to deal with this. The white knight would be lost in this type of situation. So, OK, going back. So already, white can't take a timeout. White has to potentially push this pawn forward. Just, there we go, Magnus has played it, just to block any advances by Black. This pawn move does give away the square next to it, the b4 square. This is an outpost for Black's bishop now, but the white knight is at least solidified on its outpost. And yeah, I think we'll see that dance go on. The other black rook will centralize, white's rooks will start to move into the center. And I'm expecting to see something like this, Jovanka, where it's just symmetry, total symmetry, rooks staring down at each other, these knights against the bishops in the middle of the board. And there we go, the bishop does plant itself in the middle. Just a little pretty pattern here, but who's going to break that tension? Neither side really wants to capture a knight for their bishops. Bishops are maybe stronger than knights in these positions. So, yeah, this tension is just going to go on and on and on.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think maybe it's Pragg who will crack. Maybe Pragg will actually have enough and, like, after he's lined up the queen and light square bishop together, put the queen on b7. I'm expecting the knight to get out of the way and retreat to g5, and something could happen.
Yeah, for example, trying to force white to trade off because there's too much tension now along this diagonal. So this could be a plan long term. Meanwhile, look at the tension. Look at these 4 pieces especially. It's all about these 4 squares. And yeah, who is this going to favour? Magnus down at 5 minutes, Pragg at 8 minutes. He's very calm, but he's not shaking as much as we're used to. A few days ago when he was winning matches, we saw him shaking, getting the energy going. He looks very calm now, but is that a sign maybe as well that he doesn't really believe in the energy of his position? It's very hard to create winning chances as Black.
But it could also be the type of position, because we have seen, well, he's still kind of shaking with his leg. But, I mean, when you have super complicated positions where there's calculation galore, all sorts of checks, captures, attacks, then you do tend to kind of like also mirror the energy there by shaking quite a bit. Whereas here it's a calmer position, so therefore you don't have to be on high alert. You can just kind of take it easy. I certainly would be taking it easier. I would be just like making sure that my king is safe on every move. There's no big blunder happening, and then just improve the position. And as you can see, it's just like a move by move position. Every single move that you consider, it just has to be an improving move. You have to give a purpose to the bishops or the knights.
Yeah, so you want to find that purpose, and that's why Pragg is spending so much time now. I think we might see a scramble, just tension building and building and building, and then only when they get down to 2 minutes each, then one side will release that tension and start taking risks, start asking questions to the opponent. But yeah, I mean, do you feel Pragg, he's had a bit of an up and down tournament, right? But a lot to learn from, you feel, this tournament?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely been a different story to the other two majors, and those majors, you know, he started off so well. You know, I was reading the notes of the FTX Crypto Cup, and, you know, he literally started off with 100%. And here he started off with 2 losses, and one against Anish Giri was especially devastating. But he's managed to bounce back. He beat Liam Lei, and yesterday, what a thriller that was against Duda.
Yeah.
So definitely, he's all about the learning. And what I always love about Pragg is that when you ask him about those great moments, he's just so chill about it. He probably doesn't even think that his victory against Magnus, like all the way back to the Air Things Masters, was that big a deal.
When he's older, he'll look back and be nostalgic, and he'll appreciate it more, maybe. But yeah, I guess when players are young, we're very in the moment. We don't look at past achievements, really. And that's what's been the main cause, I feel, of his success to this date. And meanwhile, though, this long think could come back to bite him. Pragg, 3 minutes. He's got very sensible move at his disposal if he wants. He can bring that other black rook, the rook on f8, into the centre, onto the d-file. That's pretty much an automatic. You can move the black queen. You advocated, Jovanka, just lining up the black queen with her light squared bishop. We showed these ideas on the analysis board, and they're all very relevant. They don't worsen your position. But do you really need to calculate here? Do you really need to spend 3.5, 4 minutes on one move when it's not maybe yet the critical moment? OK, this is the best he can come up with as well. It's a decent move, giving the black king some breathing space. But was it worth nearly 4 minutes on the clock?
No, unless he was considering something aggressive. It just seems like a simple improving move. The one thing that I would be uncomfortable with if I had Magnus's position is the queen is staring down at the black rook. And that makes me very, very nervous. So I would just move the queen.
Evacuate the c-file.
Exactly. Can't handle the tension there. Yeah. And, I mean, I was also a little bit surprised by Pragg's last move, I have to say. I was expecting something a bit more direct, just especially because we've seen Pragg play in a very forthright manner. He tends to force things and just put Magnus under a little bit more pressure.
Yeah, it feels like he had to fight his instincts, all of his natural urges, Pragg, just to play a quiet pawn move. He wanted to capture a piece. He wanted to find something direct, find some complications, but they just don't exist in this position. Both sides are so stable. Totally symmetrical pawn structure. Those knights against bishops in the centre of the board, they balance each other out. And I'm expecting Magnus to just move his rook into the centre. Again, a long think, though. It feels like both of the players, they know that this is the crucial game today, potentially in the whole tournament. And yeah, it feels like they're just burning time because they just can't stand this tension. Yeah, just move the rook into the centre, Magnus. That's what I would do, at least. What else could he consider? Move the white queen to a safer square?
Yeah.
They're not going to change the game, though. They're not going to be earth-shattering moments, earth-shattering moves. They're just very simple, calm moves. And you have to play those a bit quicker, I feel. Yeah. 3.5 minutes now for the world number one.
Yeah, and you talked about earth-shattering and tension, and I've just taken a peek at the game between Wesley So and Jan Krzysztof Duda. And there's been a complete turnaround because Wesley now is struggling with the white pieces against Jan Krzysztof Duda. So
wow, for the tournament, that could be huge.
This could be huge. So, gosh, the excitement is building.
Yeah, if Duda strikes back and goes on to win that match, if Pragg strikes back in this one and goes on to win this match, then we could see everything decided tomorrow with 3 or 4 players still in the race for first prize. But Magnus will want to clinch the tournament now by winning this match, this game. And he does go for your move, Jovanka. You predicted the future.
I always worry that the players are playing my moves. And I'm thinking, either it's a very natural move or perhaps you're playing at the level of an international master.
That's a very strong level.
It is a very strong level, I have to say. But also a little bit worrying.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the rooks have lined up, all of them on those central files now, the C and D files. But the plugs of those open files, the knights and bishops, they remain. And how are you ever going to break that tension? It feels like we will be reduced to a simple waiting game. Neither side coming up with a plan here. Who is going to blink first? Who's going to crack under the tension? I mean, this is the most tense position I've seen ever, I think, where still so many pieces on the board, yet so few plans, so few logical plans. Normally, if there's a lot of pieces on the board, one player will be playing on one side of the board, the other player will be playing on the other flank, and it's kind of a race. Who's quicker with their plans? Here, both sides have the same plan, and that's just to sit and stabilise. It's so rare.
It is very rare. And there we see Magnus centralise. I'm expecting Pragg just to also improve the queen. And then again, hand the move over to white. There's nothing very clear cut, as you mentioned. You know, there's no pawn advances. And did not expect this one. I mean, I don't think it's wrong, because after all, the position is pretty harmless for both sides. But
at least it's a plan.
It is a plan. You know, the knight is getting ready to maneuver itself over to g5. And this is going to ask some unpleasant questions to Magnus. What are you going to do about that bishop? It was very unexpected on my behalf, but I love what Pragg is doing.
Yeah, and the only way you can really imbalance this position is to get the bishop pair. So, for example, if white takes a slow timeout, if white pushes a pawn, copy what black did a few moves ago, the knight will jump out, and as you said, Jovanka, this tension is almost unbearable. You don't really want to run away with this bishop. There's no good squares for it to go. But if you allow the exchange, or if you take this black knight, for example, then suddenly black has the advantage because black's bishop on the light squares has targets. Long term, it's going to look down towards the white king. It's also going to look on this side of the board towards some weak pawns. You need to keep your bishops on the board for later. Ideally, Magnus wants to trade off this bishop for its counterpart. He doesn't want to trade it off for one of the black knights. I think the bishop pair is essential. And just as I say that, he does trade it off for one of the knights. And this must be a concrete idea. Strategically, white is in big trouble now, but Magnus has a concrete threat. He has ideas such as jumping forward with the white queen now, hitting the bishop in the center, but also hitting this pawn on g7. Look at the bishop, the white bishop on b2 that was planted there on move 2. It's suddenly come to life. So Magnus playing a move that the computers aren't a big fan of, but he's got a very direct threat in mind. And how does Pragg guard against that? It's not so easy. The black knight has retreated to a kind of passive square, kind of bad square here, while white's knights have leapt forward. They are still on great posts. Okay, things are heating up. The first exchange, we talked about who would blink. It was Magnus. And will he regret releasing that tension? Suddenly a checkmate threat on the board. This is checkmate in 1 if black captures this pawn with his queen next move. So Magnus has to guard against it. He has to push a pawn forward to kick away black's bishop.
Yeah, and very carefully picks up the f-pawn. This is very instructive because Magnus does not want to weaken himself on the light squares. It's much better to weaken the dark squares. Ooh.
This would have been too ugly.
Definitely, you know, there would be checkmating, threats galore on the light squares. No. Magnus doing the right thing. But at the same time, this is a concession because suddenly black's bishop, that was very actively placed but biting on granite, is hitting at a soft point. And we see Pragg just trade a set of rooks.
Yeah, he takes the rooks off the board and he retreats his bishop. So big threat now. Black is threatening to capture this knight to remove the defender of e3. If the knight disappears, this pawn will drop. So I think Magnus needs to block this diagonal. He needs to block it with his bishop or his knight on the d4 square. So I'm expecting, normally when your opponent has the bishop pair, you want to trade off a set of bishops. So I'm expecting this move just to exchange this dark piece, this dark square bishop. And when that happens, still everything to play for. Computer slightly prefers black. I think that's just because black is extremely active right now, especially with these 3 pieces. But how do you press the advantage? How do you build anything here? It's still a relatively balanced pawn structure. Maybe it's time to get this black knight into the game, just to bring it back where it came from. I don't think you can take time out to start going passive and defending pawns. Okay, Pragg does trade off the bishops. Magnus will recapture most likely with his rook. I guess if you... Oh, he takes with a pawn. Wow. What? Ruining the white pawn structure. This is an isolated pawn now.
Why would he do that?
Very risky. Now this black bishop is fixed on a beautiful post forever. Oh, this is really risky stuff. I think Magnus's only idea is that he wants to go after this pawn. And he also hopes that if the knight is eliminated, then suddenly he'll have 2 connected pawns in the center. But that is a pipe dream. Right now, white is saddled with an eternal weakness, an IQP, an isolated queen's pawn.
It's a big mystery to me, David. You know, it's breaking all the rules. I don't like it because it's just a one-track mind. Yes, it's attacking a pawn, but that pawn can be easily defended. And even if he did get those 2 pawns, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. If I were Pragg, I would just simply retreat my queen and defend the pawn.
Yep, defend the pawn on b6 and
bring in the knight.
Yeah.
And after you've consolidated the pawn on b6, well, I think it's time to go on the counter-attack, start attacking White's weak pawn, which was kindly gifted to him by Magnus's last move.
Yeah, this is so ugly, having this pawn in the centre now. White's pieces will be tied down defending it. You can never, ever push forward in the centre. Black has a huge long-term advantage. I think you're right, Jovanka. It's not necessarily Pragg's style to retreat, right? He's a counter-attacker. He wants to create threats. He wants to be playing on the front foot. Him and his coach, Ramesh, they have been talking about accelerators, moving the position forward, going active. But sometimes you need to take a step back, and he has sacrificed a pawn. He's just given up a pawn for free. He didn't need to do this, but now he's going active as Black. He's trying to break through on the first rank. This position has completely exploded, and we're going to see a race to the finish. Black now is attacking, just like he was in the last game, Pragg, but it has again come at the cost of a pawn. And what do you think? This king, is it in danger? Maybe.
It looks like it's in danger, and no doubt about it. I mean, is there like ideas of rook takes rook, and after that the queen diving into the e3 square just to give some checks? It's so crazy, this position.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that White also has a weak pawn, the pawn on b3. That's going to fall off the board. Yeah. I thought it was unnecessary of Magnus to go pawn hunting. He didn't need to allow this type of activity.
Yeah, and credit to Pragg, he didn't go passive, he went active, and Magnus jumped back. If he had eliminated the black bishop, this looks very sensible. You're a pawn up, so trade pieces. But suddenly the black knight is on an outpost, trying to come into all of these squares, and this would just be too strong. So we do see a rook exchange if we go back to the current position. And now black's knight is heading in anyway. It's going to be hard to prevent this. I think Magnus desperately needs to retreat his queen, block this check, and hope that the queens disappear from the board.
No
but he
way,
steps
he steps
forward,
forward
out into the open.
What is he doing?
This looks so scary. You're allowing the black knight in now. Suddenly the white king, it's living a charmed life, but will it survive? Oh, this one, the evaluation bar reacts as well. I mean, black's queen can even come in from this angle, go behind and start trying to grab some pawns. Suddenly, Magnus has lost all control. I think he's panicking. 1.5 minutes each, though. It is still a race. And this one has definitely livened up over the last few moves. Let's go back to the players. OK, Pragg eliminates one of the white knights. Next move, he's coming in. If pawn takes bishop, this is deadly now. Black's knight attacks the white queen. The queen has to step off the second rank, and suddenly, bang! Just disaster now across the second rank. A check, and this is deadly. And if the white queen takes, which it might have to, then black will do the same. Black can give a check. I'm not sure which angle. This check. And suddenly, disaster on the second rank. It's looking like Pragg is in charge. White, in order to alleviate the pressure, is going to have to retreat his queen. But now the white pawns are going to start dropping. And we will see Pragg give this check, I feel. This looks very strong now for black. He's turned it. We could see a massive comeback.
Yeah. I absolutely think we're going to see it. We are going to see Pragg turn the tables. And wow, he's been so ruthless, actually, in his last few moves. He's been clinical, he's been precise, but this is Pragg's his strengths. This is what he excels at. I don't know why Magnus is playing it into Pragg's hands.
Yeah, I mean, Magnus, just that one pawn capture in the centre. Why? It's just so ugly. You're in a situation, you're ahead in the match. I think Magnus, he feels at this point, he's had such a good tournament. He thinks he can get away with anything. But sometimes you just have to play it safe. And talking of getting away with anything, he's really playing with fire, marching out into the open. That king has no shelter.
I mean, can you play like this? I mean, is this even chess? I mean, this is just breaking the rules. I mean, I don't know what is Magnus doing. He's giving up all the pawns on the right, and he's desperately opening up lines just in order to get perpetual check. He's trying to bail out.
Yeah, he would love to bail out with a draw here, Magnus. That's the dream right now. But he does shake his head, closing his eyes there. He knows it's all gone wrong. Black's queen can give a bunch of different checks now. She can just drop down one square, check the white king along the diagonal. She can retreat to the g5 square, sitting next to a knight, checking the white king. This is a nasty check. And yeah, what can black play here? Still more checks on the board. You can take a couple of different pawns if you're black. Pragg is spoiled for choice. Up on the clock as well, and he's about to go 1 pawn up on the board. It's just looking phenomenal now. I think it's going to be a miracle if white saves this. White's knight as well. It's looked nice and pretty the whole game, but it's been far away from the defence. That's why the white king has had to run out into the open. It's king and queen. They were divorced again. Pragg is so good at spotting it when the opponent's defence is fragmented and divided like that.
And now the heat is on, and it's up to Pragg to find a way how to consolidate his position. And he gives check. This is a very sensible, build some time on the clock now that he had ticked under the 1 minute mark. And Magnus offering a repetition, like, would you like a draw? And Pragg should, of course, say, no way. Grab the pawn.
I would repeat the position once, Jovanka. Gain 10 seconds on the clock.
Yes.
Show the opponent who's boss. Repeat the position twice, but not a third time. Don't go for that draw. And yeah, we'll definitely not see Pragg agree a draw here. Even with the clock situation where he's now down, he's got some very sensible moves. Again, just a couple of different checks with black. At the right moment, you can take white's central pawn. You've got to be careful because white's queen is going to go up to the top of the board with some annoying checks. But Pragg looks like he's panicking. He gives one check. White has nothing else to do but sidestep. The problem is for black, you can't bring your knight in with a check yet. You would love to plant the black knight on the f4 square, but white's queen covers that square, so maybe you just defend that square. Black's pawn can step forward to g5, getting that black knight in.
Oh, but you know, all those moves, they come with their risks, because regardless of what the computer says, you know, you're going to allow white this huge pass pawn, and it's not an easy decision to make. So instead, Pragg has just gone for repeating the position as much as possible. But the more he does that, the more time Magnus gets on the clock and the more confident he becomes.
Yeah, and Magnus now is happy not to repeat the moves. Now the black queen can't give check from behind. I feel Pragg has let something slip here. He's checked from the wrong angle. What is the black queen doing on this side of the board? It could have grabbed a couple of pawns on the other flank, and I think that would have been very safe. But suddenly, there's only one last check available to Pragg. He's only had a few seconds there. OK, he's captured a pawn, but now the queens are coming off. Magnus has found a way to get the queens off.
Oh, no, and this is going to be a turnaround.
Yeah, I think Pragg forgot about this check. Suddenly, the queens disappear. Look at the left side of the board. White has 2 versus black's 1. White is going to promote a pawn, just make a new queen. Black's knight is too far away. Complete turnaround in just one move. The queens are coming off, but look at Magnus. He's not hesitating. It's a race, but white is winning the race. This pawn is captured, and white's new a-pawn is too close. It's going to make a new queen.
Yeah, and there it comes. The a-pawn is marching, and Pragg is desperately moving his knight to cover the promotion square. But look at the white king. It's coming in. And what a turnaround. And such heartbreaking turn of events for Praggnanandhaa. Yeah. Just one move.
And he knows it. He looked out the window. One move. The queen's coming off. And yeah, this is why having an active king, it's a matter of balance. You don't want to activate too early while the queens are on because you might get checkmated. But in an endgame, white's king now is going to go up the board. It's just going to take a pawn. It's going to chase down that black knight, and white's making a new queen. Wow, Magnus, he kind of survived that balancing act on the tightrope for so long, and he's being rewarded for it. Black's king, just one move too slow. It needs to sprint over to that left flank, but it can't get there. Yeah, Magnus, he's built up 2 minutes on the clock. Wow. Yeah. Impressive defending from the world #1.
I have to say, you know, you have to hand it to Magnus because he played the most unusual chess ever. I mean, I was completely, flabbergasted. I've never seen the like. And Praggnanandhaa too, he was also baffled, and it cost him time, and he panicked at the end. And there, not much time on clock, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, and Pragg does have a hopeless position, I'm afraid.
Yep, white's king is simply hunting down that black knight. You can trap that black knight now, and I think that will spell the end.
Wow. It's so dramatic right now in the tour finals, everyone. Not only is Magnus Carlsen probably going up by 2 points in the match against Pragg. That means, with only a draw, if this is the result, in Game 3, he will win the tour finals. And just there, Wesley So went up by 2 points in the San Francisco arena against Jan Krzysztof Duda. He will only need a draw in game 3 to win that match. But Wesley, he needs Magnus to lose today's match to have any hopes of winning the tour finals. The only thing he can do is try to win his games, Wesley So, and hope Pragg does the job against Magnus. Arjun Erigaisi has also gone up by 2 points in his match against Liam Le. Mamedyarov is up by 1 point in the match against Anish Giri. And in this one, is there any hope for Pragg?
There's a small glimmer of hope. That is, if White does get greedy and take that black knight at the wrong moment, White's king could actually get trapped in the corner. So that's why Pragg is waiting. He's saying, please take my knight, please take my knight. And if White does capture that black knight, the black king will shuffle across 1 square. Yeah, suddenly White is a bit stuck. I think maybe you can get away with that, but perhaps you shouldn't rush if you're Magnus Carlsen. Maybe you just push a few pawns, re-centralise the white knight, and you wait for the right moment to just pick off Black's piece in the corner.
Yeah, I agree with you there, David, because if you're objective about the position, Black is totally tied down, can't do a thing. So you don't need to rush to take the knight. Instead, like you say, advance some pawns, move the knight, and wait for Black to move.
Yeah, just to show the one risk, if you do get greedy and capture this black knight, then suddenly you're stuck. The white king cannot escape. If you, for example, try to give a check to drive away the black king just moves, and still no escape for the white king. Also, remember, the white knight can't get too greedy, can't run away too far, because black does have a central pawn, a pass pawn of his own. So white's knight will have to retreat, return, and block this pawn. It feels like this should be winning anyway, but you have to be very careful because you're essentially playing without a king, and this pawn doesn't actually make a difference anymore on a7. So I'm expecting Magnus to hesitate, to pause. He's using all of his remaining time, and I think he can just simply retreat his knight, keep the tension. OK, he even goes back with his king. He leaves the black knight where it is. This is a dead piece anyway. First, he's going to hunt down some pawns with the white king. He might even take this guy at some point and then go back for the black knight. It's a bit surprising. He is really unsure of how to win this, Magnus. This is where evaluation bar versus human, it's so different. From a human point of view, it's not as easy as the computer shows. And Magnus does step back to capture this pawn. At least now Pragg can block the white king's path in towards his knight. But Magnus is playing for Zugzwang. He's hoping later on to break through and go for this knight once again. It's still winning, but less straightforward now. That's for sure.
Yeah. It is less straightforward, but at the same time, it's kind of easier for white, less calculation involved and more about improving the pieces. And there you can see Magnus putting his king opposite Black's king. This is just great technique, taking something that we call the opposition.
Yep, and going for Zugzwang. Black's knight only has one legal move. It can come out with a check, but it will have to return into the corner. Pragg, meanwhile, his dream is to exchange off all the pawns on the right half because white has one remaining pawn on h2, which is a potential queen. So Pragg wants to trade off if he can, but it will again be a race. Black is playing without a knight temporarily, remember? And can Black kick away white's knight and then go after white's a-pawn while being in time to stop white's h-pawn from running? Magnus, he's spent all his time there. Has he calculated his way to victory? Pragg here, he just has to go for white's a-pawn. He has to free up black's knight, and he has to cross his fingers and hope that the black knight can jump across later to stop white's h-pawn. But it feels like it shouldn't be possible. Knights, remember, are terrible defenders when it comes to stopping rook's pawns, a-pawns and h-pawns. Valuation bar reacts, however.
Ooh.
The black knight is out of jail. It was allowed to survive. It does feel, however, like it should still be winning for white. The evaluation bar does recorrect itself. But can Magnus hold off that black knight? If he can sacrifice it, Pragg, for that white h-pawn, draw. Yeah. But it's still far from possible.
Well, I have now the in-game table base, which tells me that as long as Magnus starts pushing the h-pawn, completely winning. And the most obvious winning move is actually just to take the pawn on f6 with the king.
Yep, that looks very strong, very logical as well. Black's knight is going to try and come to capture that white h-pawn, but it shouldn't work. It should be too slow. And notice how Black's king, even if it grabs that white a-pawn, is miles away from the action. So that's why having these h-pawns, these a-pawns, they're so effective in knight endgames. In rook endgames, they're the worst type of pawn to have. In most endgames, they're the worst type of pawn to have. But in knight endgames, they're beautiful because knights can only stop these corner pawns from one side. And OK, Magnus steps back into the centre, and the question is now, can he start motoring?
Yep. And this is also a win. And here, everything loses, apparently. There is nothing that white can do to spoil the win. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Only one move now. Only one move for white to draw, and that is that knight has to go and protect the pawn on a7. It has to jump to, yes.
Yeah. Yep, so it's white playing for the win, black playing for the draw. So he does protect his pawn, keeps it alive, and black's pieces, they're both stuck, both completely paralysed. Black's king in the corner, black's knight stopping the advance of white's h-pawn. We should say as well, if black can give his knight up for the h-pawn, even if white's a-pawn survives now, it is a draw, because black's king is in the corner. There's no way to break through. It will always be stalemate. So you have to somehow sneak past that guardian of the h5 square, the black knight. White's king might have to go the long way around. It might have to go kind of round and behind and then towards that black knight. There's no way towards it yet. OK, he steps across. And here I'm expecting black to continue waiting. Black's king is just going to go back and forth, back and forth. And now it would be a huge blunder if Magnus pushes his h-pawn, because black can take it, and that would be a draw. OK, now he moves his knight across. You have to kick away the black knight with the white knight. And he's doing so.
He is doing it. He's removing that guardian, as you mentioned. And now the h-pawn comes, and yep, according to the table bases, completely lost for black.
Black's king, again, it's caught on the wrong side of the board. This is the second or third time in the game the opponent's king is caught on the wrong side. And it's trying to race its way over, but kings are so slow. They're like old men with their walking sticks. It's just one step at a time. But pawns are just as quick, unfortunately, for Pragg here. And that pawn is 2 squares away. The black knight has to stop it. But now we will see white's knight do a bit of a dance. It will drop back, and it will try to kick away this defender, the black knight. White can also create a path in for his king by doing that.
Yeah,
White's knight is going to move.
But white does have to be accurate. The winning attempt is actually to move the knight back to the third row, to the e3 or g3 squares, and maneuver itself that way. If it actually sprung forward to the d6 square, that would actually turn the tables.
How about
and it would
d4,
be a draw.
Jovanka?
If you went to d4, it's also winning.
That, to me, is the most logical here. You can retreat your knight to a few different squares. As Jovanka mentioned, these two are winning. To me, the most logical is to centralise. This is the first move that popped into my mind, because now the black king cannot come towards the pawn. Magnus does play this. There's a trick now. If the black king starts moving across towards the pawn, there's a nasty knight check, deflecting away the black knight, and white is left with only a pawn in his whole army. But it's enough. There's no way to stop this pawn from promoting to a new queen. So this is so clever by Magnus. He's cut off the black king from advancing to any of these 3 squares that would all be impossible now. So the black knight has to wait, but now the white king is coming, and it's only a couple of moves away from dislodging the knight. This one is game over. You see Pragg look away. The knight is going to get kicked away. White will make a new queen. Game over. What a turnaround.
Magnus on fire. This is so impressive stuff by the world #1. And he will now be 1 draw away from winning the tour finals.
Yeah, he was on the brink of defeat. And also, Wesley had let it slip. Duda was about to win. Suddenly, both games, around the same moment, they turned around. And here we go. White's knight is irrelevant. It's key to go after black's piece. And look at the 2 pawns. White is clearly ahead in any race.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to do. Pragg has to move his knight out of the way. You can move it to g5, you can retreat it to f8 with a check. Either way, white is going to continue chasing that black knight.
Yeah. And unfortunately, okay, after this knight moves to the square, you can actually just capture the pawn and attack the knight, and you're still winning. And this looks so natural.
Yeah, remove the final defender of that black knight. The knight has to retreat, it has to blockade. Knights, we say, are normally good blockaders, but just, again, it's these A and H pawns. They're the only pawn they struggle against. And here we go. Pragg is going to resign. No way to stop white's pawn anymore. And Magnus does take the win.
Incredible. Winning the 2nd game in a row. Magnus Carlsen is up by 2 points. And he can not only